Okay, welcome to the School of Information Science online information session. We are housed in the College of Communication and Information at the University of Kentucky, and we have two fully online master's programs with library science and information communication technology. And we also have an undergraduate program in information communication technology. That program has an on-campus and an online degree completion program portion. I'm Drew Brown, and I work with the ICT undergraduate program. And we also have Heather Burke here. She wants to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Student Affairs Officer for the school, and I work primarily with coordinating advising for library science and scheduling classes for the school. So welcome. It's good to see y'all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley DeWitt. I'm the admissions coordinator for the library science program. I'm also the faculty advisor for the ALA student chapter that we have here at UK. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah Jane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Jane Tammy, and I am the admissions coordinator and the student affairs officer for the ICT master's program in our school. So I will be talking to those of you who signed up for that session.
We'll be going into breakout rooms here shortly. Our IT specialist, Evan, is working on putting everybody in the correct room and making sure that everything's set up correctly. And that you should get a pop-up on your screen that says to join your specific breakout room that you signed up for, and just join that, and we'll be in there shortly.
Heather, are you recording on yours as well? Excellent.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Heather and I have already introduced ourselves. One thing we didn't share is that we are both graduates of this library science program. So we have been where you are right now, gathering information, making decisions, about to embark on this next stage. So the presentation itself should take about 30 minutes. We also have time for questions, and you're welcome to ask those at any point that you have them. Feel free to unmute yourself, or Heather will be monitoring the chat if you would prefer to type your question out. So we will go ahead and get started. So this is a 36 credit hour master's program that is pretty standard across our field. That equates to 12 classes. You can complete the degree completely online. We don't have any face-to-face classes. Actually, this is a fully online program. Everything you do will be online. It's also an asynchronous program, meaning that you don't have to be online at a particular time on a particular day. Most of our classes run on a weekly or a bi-weekly schedule. So your instructor may say, our week starts on Monday. By Thursday, I want you to have X done. By Sunday, I want you to have Y done. And it's up to you to find the time in your week to accomplish those tasks, whether that's reading, discussion boards, projects, activities. We find that that flexibility works really well for our students, many of whom are working full or part-time or have other responsibilities. The important thing to know is that the classes do follow the standard semester calendar. They start with the on-campus classes, they end with the on-campus classes. It's not a free-for-all, there is structure. And if you are an online student here at UK, you qualify for a special online rate. And that's true whether you're in the state of Kentucky or you live outside of it, which is a really nice savings. So we've got about 300 students in the program right now. We're not one of the biggest, we're not one of the smallest, we're sort of right in the middle. We are one of the oldest continuous programs. We started teaching LIS classes here at UK in 1918. And we've been offering classes in distance education for about 30 years now. So we're not new to this game. This is something our faculty are well versed in. Speaking of which, we have 10 full-time faculty, and we are well ranked in the US News and World Report, 17th overall for the program, 3rd for health information, 11th for school library media, and then 12th for services for children and youth. So I'm going to pause there just to see if we've got any questions so far. Not seeing any, so we will continue as soon as I get it to cooperate. So let's talk a little about academics. As I mentioned, there are concentrations that we offer in this program. The important thing to remember is the concentrations are not formal degree designations. Think of them more as guidelines. So if you're interested in academic libraries and you want that to be your concentration, we will recommend classes for you. It doesn't mean that you have to take them all, and you are welcome to mix and match across concentrations. The one concentration that is a little bit different is our school libraries concentration. That's because these are students that already have a valid teaching certificate and are earning both their master's degree in library science and becoming eligible for certification as a school librarian in that sort of K-12 public school arena. So those students have a more specified course plan that they have to follow to meet those educational requirements. But everything else, you're welcome to mix and match. So if you're interested in, say, information technology and systems and public libraries, by all means, we want you to choose classes across those concentrations. It's really just there to help guide you so that you know what classes we offer and which classes may align well with your interests. So speaking of those classes, I mentioned 36 hours, 12 classes. Everyone takes the 4 core classes. That's our 600 through 603. 600 is sort of an introduction to the profession, who we are, what we do, why we do it, why it matters. 601 is information seeking. How do we find information efficiently and effectively? How do we connect people with information that meets their needs? 602 is kind of a flip side class to 601 is how do we organize information? How do we create information systems so that we can find what we're looking for when we need to? So think metadata, information sharing. And then 603 is a foundational management class. Everyone in this field manages something, whether you're the director of a huge library system with a lot of branch libraries, or you're in charge of craft supplies for your summer reading program, you're going to manage something. So we have a management class to make sure all of our graduates have a firm grounding in management and teamwork so that you can use that going forward. Now you'll notice that the courses have sequential numbers. They are not sequential in content. You can take them in any order, and most of our students do. So you can start with 603 and then do 601 and then 600 and 602. It doesn't matter. Outside of the 4 core classes, you need to take at least 1 technology class, but we always recommend that you take as many as you're interested in. Our field is very responsive to technology. So the more facility you have, the more understanding you have of technology, the easier it will be for you to pivot when we inevitably have new systems and technologies that we're using. So we have quite a number of technology classes on offer. 636 is a good foundational let's start at the beginning class. If you're feeling a little unsure, or if you're more advanced, we have things like 668, which is an advanced database building class. And then several of our 690 special topics classes also have an IT focus. So when Heather sends out the schedules every semester, she always notes which classes count towards the IT requirements. So you'll never have to wonder, and you can pick and choose which ones interest you the most. Your next 7 classes are your electives. You can pick anything at all in our catalog. And on the next slide, I have some options to talk about. But that also includes things like our 672 practicum class, where you can get course credit for doing an internship, and also our 695 independent study, where you can design your own class under the supervision of one of our full-time faculty members. So there's a lot of ways to customize your program. So some of the sample electives that we have, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it just gives you an idea. We have things like youth literature for a diverse society, that's 612. Public libraries, 645. Introduction to data science, 661. And then I mentioned our 690 special topics classes. So we've had things like adult services or informal learning and information organizations. Those 690 classes, often we have new ones that have never been offered before. So it's always a good idea to look at that upcoming schedule just to see what's going to be there. Some of them are offered very consistently and then even become standard classes in the program. So for instance, we had a social media class that started as a special topics class and now is just a standard course offering in our program. So I will pause here. Does anybody have any questions about this content? Okay, is anybody here interested in the school library program? No. Okay, I'm not seeing any head shakes, so I'm going to assume no, which means that I can skip this slide. I'll give you the high level overview. Basically, our school library students, you'll see, have less choice. They do have choices, but they have a little less choice because they have to meet those certification requirements. So let's talk about some of the student opportunities that you have within our program. We have something called Alternative Spring Break. We've been doing this since 2011. I just realized that we're about to do the 10th or 11th version of this program, which is very exciting. So what happens is our students intern with institutions like Smithsonian Libraries, National Library of Medicine, and also Region 1 of the Network of Libraries of Medicine. In the past, we've also worked with the National Archives and Library of Congress, so the partner organizations can change year to year. But what you do is you spend the week of our spring break, which is usually the second or third week of March, interning with these institutions on projects where you can really put what you've learned in the program into practice. So it's a great way to get that practical application and also to intern at some really incredible institutions. As you can imagine, the last couple of years, the program has had to be online because of the pandemic. But in non-pandemic times, we do actually send students physically to these institutions. And the school typically provides $1,000 of scholarship money to each student selected to help offset the costs of travel and housing. So it's an incredible opportunity for students in our program. It's something that's very unique to our program. You won't really find it in other places. So typically we announce the projects during the fall semester, and that's when the application cycle happens. And then the students are selected usually at the end of the fall semester for that following spring break year. We always encourage you to apply. It is competitive. So usually we have about 8 to 10 spots available, and we often have many more applicants than we have spots for. So if you'll be in the program for multiple springs, we encourage you to apply each semester that you'll be eligible. Does anybody have any questions about Alternative Spring Break? You guys are making this so easy today.
Sorry, I do actually have a question
Yes.
about that program.
Go ahead.
Do you know if this next session in the spring is going to be physically there, or are they doing an online version again?
So at this point, our cooperating host institutions are planning on virtual, simply because they have restrictions at their institutions.
Gotcha. And then, so you said kind of like Smithsonian and a couple of other ones as well. Are you adding more every year, or is that like it changes, like you can only have like 3 options or something?
So we're always
If that
looking for
question
new
makes sense.
partners. It just happens that these are the partners that have had placements the most recent years. But if you have ideas for new partners, we're always happy to hear that. I actually coordinate the program, so I'm the person who reaches out to see if we have other institutions who'd like to host. So for right now,
Excellent,
our
thank you.
plan this coming year is Region 1 of the National Networks, the Library of Medicine, and then also NLM. Until we can go back to in-person ASB, we probably won't be able to partner with Smithsonian because so many of their projects are very hands-on. You do need to be there. That was a great question. Any other questions? All right, so let's get into finances, a very important consideration of any master's program. So these are the current rates for this academic year, 2021, 2022. And remember at the beginning, I said there's an online only rate. So that is about $6,300 if you're full-time, and for a graduate student, that is 9 hours or 3 classes a semester. Or it's $700.50 per credit hour, about $2,100 a class if you're going part-time. So that would be 8 or fewer hours, or in our program, it's basically 1 or 2 classes. So either 3 credit hours or 6 credit hours. And you'll notice that the online rate is actually a little bit less than even the resident rate is, the in-state tuition rate, because online students are not required to pay some of the usually mandatory fees, things like recreation or health, because you can't benefit from them. The university does not make you pay for them. In terms of application deadlines, If you're looking at spring semester, and I imagine several of you are, that deadline is November 15th, so we have about a month left. If you're looking at next summer, that would be March 15th, and if you're looking at fall, that's July 1st. Caveat to all of this, if you're interested in things like scholarships or assistantships or fellowships, you need to have your applications in much sooner. So for fellowships, definitely by the end of this calendar year, sometime in December. If you're looking at assistantships, February 1st, I would say at the latest. And if you're looking at scholarships, June 1st at the latest. Speaking of funding, pardon me. So we have some internal options and some external options. UK does award fellowships. This is the most competitive form of funding you're probably going to have, simply because they might award a dozen in a year, and you're competing against the 8,000 plus other graduate students at this institution. But that's not to say our students aren't awarded fellowships. So we encourage you, look at the graduate school's website, see if you are a competitive candidate for the fellowships. And if you are, we encourage you to apply. We have a form on our website that you can indicate that you're planning to apply for a fellowship, because there's some things we need to gather on our end. And again, if you want to apply for the fellowships, please make sure that your application is in December, and please make sure your fellowship application for us is in early January, so we have time to gather everything together. I think we might have some questions in the chat. Oh, Heather, thanks. So Heather's provided the links. We often also have assistantships. So students who have assistantships do have to be able to work physically here in Lexington in an on-campus library. Those assistantships start in August of each year and end in August of each year. So it runs the full calendar year of whatever academic calendar we're in. Those applications are due March the 1st. So again, I said, please have your application in by February 1st, because we need to have already admitted you to the program if you're going to be considered for an assistantship. So in exchange for working 20 hours a week in one of the on-campus libraries, your tuition is paid for the fall and spring semesters. You have health insurance, and you are awarded a small stipend. We also have scholarships, and that's open to every student in this program. It doesn't matter if you're full-time or part-time, in-state or out-of-state, everybody is eligible to apply for those. That application is due June 15th. And you do need to be admitted for us to consider you for a scholarship. Again, it's just important to have your application in before you apply for funding in whatever capacity you want to. We do take academic merit into consideration. We're also looking at financial need. So our scholarships are modest. They're usually anywhere between about $500 to $1,500. Where you have options for larger scholarships are external to our institution. So for instance, the American Library Association is a huge supporter of students in this field, as you would expect. And they have wonderful scholarships, often several $1,000s a piece. Their application is typically due March the 1st each year. The application pool usually opens October, November, so that you have lots of time to look at the available scholarships and get your materials together. There are several general scholarships. There's a lot of very specific ones. So it's worth the time to look through everything available, apply for what you qualify for. In the past, Beta Phi Mu, which is our honor society, has also done scholarships. I know for the last couple of years that they've only been able to award scholarships at the doctoral level, but it's always worth looking. There's also state library associations. So for instance, the Kentucky Library Association scholarships are open to students in Kentucky pursuing a master's degree in library science from an accredited institution, and also students who are out of state who are specifically doing our library science program at UK. So because you are enrolled in our program, you then qualify for the Kentucky Library Association scholarships. If you're an out-of-state student, check your state library association, because they may have a very similar rule, many of them do, where the expectation is that you're either in a program in your state or you're in an ALA accredited program in some other state, but happen to be a resident. Also, don't forget the regional associations. Southeastern Library Association has a scholarship, and many of the other regional associations do as well. So the point of all of this being, it's worth your time and effort to cast your net very wide There are scholarships and funding opportunities available, but it does take a bit of legwork and a bit of planning on the side of the student to make sure that you know the deadlines, have all your materials together, and can be considered for those opportunities, because we often hear anecdotally that scholarship money goes unawarded every year because students simply don't apply. Everybody thinks, oh, I don't have a chance. I'm not going to even submit a scholarship. But if everybody thinks that way and no one applies, nobody gets the scholarship. So if you are qualified for a scholarship, please do apply, because you never know. And we often have students who receive these awards, so it is worth your time. So let's talk a little bit about how to apply. For admissions requirements, we're looking for a GPA of a 3.0 or higher from your undergraduate institution. And if you've done any previous graduate work, a 3.0 or higher there as well. It doesn't matter what your previous degrees are in terms of the field. Every field is useful to library science because it just means that you have some kind of field specific knowledge that you can bring with you. Your degree does need to be from a regionally accredited institution. That's very important. Outside of that, you need our 3 letters of recommendation. That can be any combination of professional and academic. Often students in this program have been out of academia for quite some time. So if all you have is 3 professional references, that's perfectly fine. We're happy to accept those. It doesn't matter if you don't have an academic reference. Then we'd like a personal statement where you explain to us, why do you want to go into this field? What is it about library and information science that really excites you? What is your passion? And then 2, why is our program a good fit for your career goals? So out of all the programs you could choose, why us? Why UK? So that we can see why we're a good fit for you too. The last piece is a current CV or resume, just so we can get a sense of what other experiences you might have that could be relevant to this field. I will say, if anybody has GPAs that are below that 3.0 requirement, it doesn't mean that you can't be considered for admission. In those cases, we ask that you write one more statement where you explain to us the circumstances that led to that lower GPA, and however much detail you feel comfortable sharing, and then why you feel like you're ready to succeed in a graduate level program now. Writing the statement doesn't guarantee that you'll be admitted, but it does give us more context so that we can understand you more holistically as we consider your application. In terms of actually getting to the application, there's a lot of channels to do this. Some of them require more clicking than others. The quickest and easiest way to get there is from our graduate school's website, which is conveniently gradschool.uky.edu. You'll see a homepage very much like this one. And that second menu option, prospective students, the first option in the drop-down menu is apply. That will take you straight to the application portal. It is the most convenient way to get there. And once you're there, you'll create an application, and then you'll be able to enter your information. You can save it. You can come back later. You don't have to do the whole thing in one sitting. But do remember your login information, because accessing your account is very difficult if you forget it. And at that point, that's the end of the presentation. So you can always email myself at ashjewett@uky.edu. If you need to get in touch with Heather, you can reach her at that sis@uky.edu address. And at this point, what questions do you have that we haven't discussed yet? The floor is open. We are here to help.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
As far as most of like the scholarships and assistantships and everything go, are those things you can apply for at any time throughout I mean, like if I start, obviously it's probably too late for me to apply now if I start in the spring, but I mean, could I still apply for them for the following semesters and such?
Yes. So as spring student, you absolutely can apply for the school scholarships because we don't award those until the fall semester anyway. So
Right, okay.
that's still open to you. Assistantships do run on the academic year. So we have students in those assistantship positions now. And then when we open, you can apply now. The application is already open. When we make those decisions in the spring, that will be for fall 2022 through fall or summer 2023. So in that case, as a spring student, you'll have to wait until your second semester to be considered for an assistantship. Does that make sense?
Yep, that was my question.
Other questions? Heather and I are here, and we're happy to answer whatever ones you have.
I do have a question. I guess it's kind of specific to what I'm hoping to do with my graduate degree. I'm really interested in focusing on public libraries and outreach strategies, because my favorite thing is talking to people who don't use the library, which is just, how do you do that? I'm hoping to do something with data analytics, cultural competency, things like that. Is there like some sort of research project that you can turn into like a culminating experience, or an independent study, or something where I can work on a project I'm kind of designing?
Yes, so there is an independent study, which I would absolutely suggest for you to do that more sort of researched based part of your interest. And then I would also really strongly encourage you to do a practicum as well. And both of those classes are actually repeatable. So in that case, for the practicum, you could go find someone who is an outreach director and actually work with them on an existing project, which I think would be such a great use of your time in the program and really give you that hands-on experience with that specific area that you want to work in. So that's definitely a case where use those practicum and those independent studies to really dive deep into that content area.
I wanted to jump in here with that question. I helped kind of coordinate the 672 class. We have like a learning contract. I work with our faculty advisors on that. One thing I would mention is that we do have different library science faculty on our full-time faculty who have that particular area as a research area. So if you are interested in doing some kind of partnership there, whether that's in the context of an independent study or doing like actual applied research or working with faculty, I would encourage you to also reach out to your faculty advisor in the program. And I'm just thinking like off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like 3 different people who that is exactly what they're very motivated by. The other thing I would recommend is, you know, if you have a really particular career interest, we have that generalist concentration where you can very much mix and mold your courses and your program of study to what you want to do in the future. So if outreach services and things like that are important to you, you know, I would pull in some of that information systems classes, like, you know, anything like related to social media, any classes in that vein, as well as obviously like the public libraries classes, adult services and programming. That would be a great one. But there are ways where you can very much customize your course of study with the electives you choose. And as Ashley mentioned, independent study and practicum. And independent study does not necessarily have to be a big research paper. A lot of times we have students in independent studies who are working on a project based, like an applied research project for those. So the one I remember off the top of my head is we have a student who was in the program a few years back who did work with Optilect and assistive technologies for the blind and the hard of hearing, and integrating those into the library system. And she actually was able to take the research about implementing those technologies and take that to the library she was working at. So it can have a direct application as well as that sort of theoretical basis in research. So independent study is definitely a really good option if you're interested in really deep diving into something, or if we just don't have a course that particular semester that covers that content. So that's a pretty specific example, but I think that that may be something that you look at doing, and you do partner with a full-time faculty member when you do that. It doesn't have to be your advisor. In the program, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So you can work with any of our full-time faculty. And I know that we've had people working on things like maker spaces and unique uses for library programming and technology. So those are all different options you would have. But I think that, customizing your degree with that generalist concentration, bringing in those courses would be a really good option in your case as well.
It's a great question. Anybody else have questions?
I just wanted to say thank you. That was a lot to think about, but that's excellent. That's what I need to hear.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I actually had a question. You might have mentioned this, but how many positions are there for those assistantships?
So this past academic year, we've had 4, and that's been pretty consistent for the last few years. We've had up to 10. I don't anticipate having that many moving forward, but I would say 4 to 5 is pretty normal for us. Anyone else? No question too big or too small.
So following up with the assistantships, for those assistantships, you said that they run through the calendar year. If were to be admitted to an assistantship for their first year, do those students typically get accepted to the assistantship their second year, or does it kind of vary from year to year? So
it varies from year to year. Funding is not guaranteed for the second year. So if you have an assistantship and you want to keep an assistantship, you have to apply again that first year. And then sometimes we have students that stay exactly where they are. Sometimes students who've had an assistantship in one area then have an assistantship in another area. And then sometimes students aren't selected for the second year. So it really does depend on what UK Libraries needs, because their needs change every year. And then our applicant pool. I always encourage you apply for funding every year, because the answer is always no if you don't apply, but it can be yes if you do apply. But yes, you will need to apply every year, and the funding is not guaranteed. Even if you're funded one year, you may not be funded the next year.
Gotcha. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I actually have kind of another specific question in my situation. I am based out of Idaho Falls in Idaho, and we have one public library here. My question is about the practicum course. Does this program help folks find like virtual internships to do that practicum course? Or I'm kind of wondering, would I most likely be kind of just with this Idaho Falls Public Library, which is also fine. It's a fabulous library, but just wondering about the options.
Actually, is it okay if I take this one?
I was going to ask if you wanted to.
So that is a great question. So a virtual internship may count toward the practicum course, as long as it meets the required hours and what's stipulated in the learning contract. With internship positions, because we do have such a wide array across the states, including we have people who are taking classes who are serving overseas. So we can't be in every single place to do direct placements. However, that is sort of where I come in, and I will always advertise any type of practicum opportunity, especially if it's paid. We can and do allow paid internships to count for the practicum. We highly prefer you get paid. There will occasionally be employers in different areas that reach out with opportunities for internships as well as job opportunities. And so those are things that come to me, and I directly share those with our student email list. So usually if I have somebody who has something in mind, they may in fact reach out to me. We have a very wide alumni network. And so some of our alumni will contact me. I know, for instance, I had one of our alumnuses is in New York and is an outreach librarian. And had I was able to refer some folks. He had wanted to work with somebody, and you know, they're in New York, but often it will be just a matter of kind of seeing what's out there at the time. And I also meet individually with students very often to discuss practicums. When you are in the program, you'll want to do your core courses first before we can consider you to do for doing a practicum. But at that point, just the semester prior is usually the best time to start planning. You can reach out to me. What I'll do is probably meet with you, talk about what you want to do, talk about some different options. Certainly your local public library is an option, but if there are, you know, other possibilities that you're looking into, I can look into those and we can discuss them. And then we just sort of follow up after that with your faculty advisor, who will be your final grader for the practicum course, the person you send your project to and your reflection paper when you're done. And the same thing with independent studies. There's you know, there's not necessarily a working hours you have to fulfill for the independent study. It's definitely more research kind of and curricular based, but there is also a contract for that. Students don't self-register for those courses because we do have to have things approved. We want to make sure that you're in a proper internship situation and not just fetching somebody coffee and or not have a someone who is directly mentoring you. And there are definitely, you know, especially grad students can be taken advantage of, and we want to make sure our students are not. So that's why we vet all of those with the learning contract. We have that process, but I'm always here as sort of the go-between. So if an employer has questions about you know, what do I need to have for them to get course credit, or how is this structured? How does this work? I can answer those and work with the student, the site supervisor, and their faculty advisor to put a plan into place that is going to be a successful practicum experience and something that you are very well prepared for and everybody can get behind. So that is really how that process works. But because it is kind of a layered process, we usually ask students to start thinking about that the semester prior to when they want to be enrolled.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We're so grateful that you guys spent part of your morning with us. We want to be respectful of your time. So if at any point you need to go, feel free. You can exit from this room. But Heather and I will hang out for a minute or two more if you have any other questions. But if not, thank you very much. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your time.
You're so welcome.